From the Gulf States Newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm sports and culture reporter Joseph King, chopping it up this week. But also this week, we're doing something special. We're going on a train ride. And our guide today is economic mobility reporter Stephen Basaha. What's up, Stephen?
Hey, Joseph. Happy to share the Amtrak line with you.
That's good to hear. And Stephen, I'm more of a flight guy. But, I don't mind a good train ride. It comes with different amenities. I might can get some food and
a lot more leg room.
Yeah, more leg room. It just takes a little bit longer.
It does, yeah.
But what makes this train so special?
Yeah, what makes it special is that it's actually been impossible to get a ticket for this train for 20 years. This is an Amtrak train traveling from Mobile, Alabama, along the Mississippi coast and finally stopping in New Orleans. Now, Hurricane Katrina damaged these railroad tracks in 2005, and it's taken until mid-August of this year to get an Amtrak train rolling again.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, what took 20 years?
Well, it wasn't just the damage from Katrina to these railroads. These railroads are privately owned, and, I don't want to get into the negotiations that led to this line. That's less important, I think, than using this as an opportunity to check in with a couple of these Mississippi stops to really see how bad Katrina was back then 20 years ago and how it's changed these communities 2 decades later.
All right, you ready to hop on board?
Yeah, let's do it. After you.
Southbound Amtrak 969, southbound Mardi Gras service, inaugural run from Mobile to New Orleans with multiple stops in between.
Okay, so the announcement says southbound, but mostly we are moving west. We wave goodbye to downtown Mobile and head into Mississippi. The train itself is that classic Amtrak blue and gray, pretty much new. And inside, there's way more legroom than a flight and a cafe car serving Gulf Coast shrimp. During this part of the ride, there is a sun shower giving the bayous and small towns we pass a warm, late summer day vibe.
And ladies and gentlemen, our first stop, once again, we Pascagoula, Mississippi. Pascagoula, Mississippi.
Pascagoula is a small coastal city. It's got shipyards, raised beach houses, abstract steel sculptures downtown. And the important thing to remember about Pascagoula is that it is as far from New Orleans as any Mississippi city on the coast gets. It's roughly a 2-hour drive from New Orleans to here. And yet, despite all that distance from the city most associated with Hurricane Katrina, that storm dragged enough water into Pascagoula to submerge just about all of it.
The geographic footprint of Hurricane Katrina's wrath, it was the size of Great Britain.
Let me introduce you to Paige Roberts. We met not far from the train depot in the city's downtown. She raised a family on the coast here and currently runs the Jackson County Chamber of Commerce. But back in the Katrina days, she was the head of the Red Cross's chapter for this corner of Mississippi. And she's given me a tour of Pascagoula, starting with these train tracks downtown. And these tracks, they serve as a sort of marker.
This is where the water came to from the Gulf.
I made it all the way to the tracks. How far are we from the water over here?
It's probably a mile.
Quick Google map check shows it's more than 1.5 miles from the coast, and the storm surge still made it all the way here. Other parts of the city were also drowned when the water rose from the Pascagoula River that wraps around the city.
So about 90% of the entire city went underwater at some level.
Think about that for a second. 90% of this city, so far from New Orleans, 90% of it was flooded by Katrina. And this was not a gentle flooding. It was violent.
It flattened just about everything in its place. And if it didn't flatten it, it lifted it up and moved it.
So remember how Paige said the whole stretch of area damaged by Hurricane Katrina
was the size of Great Britain?
Well, the thing to know about a hurricane's huge mass of wind and water is that it's not all made equally, or at least not equally dangerous. What side you're on matters. I mean, look, you don't want to be on any side of a hurricane, but bear with me for a minute and picture a hurricane, like that big ball of white we've all seen in those satellite photos. Imagine that north half over land and the bottom half over water. Hurricanes spin counterclockwise. So imagine those winds rotating from the west side into the south where the water is, and then dragging that ocean water with it as it moves northeast. That's what causes the worst of the storm surge. The reason New Orleans is synonymous with Katrina is not because it got the worst of that storm. It was actually on the safer west side. But New Orleans was so badly flooded because of man-made failures, like the levees breaking. The Mississippi coastal cities were mostly on the more dangerous east side, and they did get the worst of the storm. And as Katrina started dragging that storm surge into Mississippi and Pascagoula, Paige Roberts spent part of her time here, in the county's Emergency Operations Center.
Thank you.
And one of the people she spent that day and many days after with was Terry Jackson. At the time, he was the center's deputy director. Now he's the office's operations coordinator.
This is what it looked like during Katrina, this office. It was a mess. It was a dump.
I mean, it doesn't look like as messy as you would
Doesn't look that bad.
No, it was bad.
Terry and Paige, they talk like old war buddies, and in a way, they are. They trade off telling stories like a team. Like one story about when one of the guys at the operations center spotted his truck going underwater early during the storm surge.
And he called his insurance company
Yes.
before we lost power. Remember that?
It was
said,
the help.
I need to report my truck. I've got a claim. And she said, what's the claim? Said it's underwater. And
wanted
she
to
said, well,
know
the storm's
how
not
we
even over. What are
Right.
you talking
Yeah.
about? And
Yeah.
he said, yeah. He said, my truck's underwater. And he was probably the first claim with that insurance
Yeah.
company, she said.
That's what, yeah.
Due to the
I
storm.
remember.
It was still happening.
That's one of the stories I remember too. So back to Terry's and my favorite story. So we're rescuing all these people. Well, that includes people with infants, babies and infants. And we didn't have formula. But the WIC building had formula, the Women, Infant, Children building, which is a government building. So Terry and some of my Red Cross volunteers left here and tell them what you did.
Well, this was about day 3, day 4.
Yeah.
We started eating the milk because the infants were starving and nobody had any. So we come up with the idea we'll just go over to the WIC building and see if anybody may be around there. Nobody was around there, so we just took it up on ourselves to break into it. We broke the lock off, got the National Guard over there, and we hauled every bit of the product out of there. So they're either going to take us to jail or we'll ask for forgiveness, but we're going to feed these babies, and we did.
Did they take you off the jail? I'm assuming
No,
not.
nobody. Nobody.
At
we
one
got,
point, I wanted to be taken to jail. Nobody would be able to find me or guess that I was there.
You could hear both Paige and Terry laughing and smiling as they tell these stories, which can be a bit surprising.
You laugh instead of cry, first of all.
Yeah.
But second of all, laughing is oftentimes a relief response because, and also like, wow, we did that.
It wasn't a laughing matter by no means. I have my horror stories of
Yeah.
it too, and I'm not going to talk about them. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm good. I can't talk about it because a lot of people suffer in a bad way.
Riding through Pascagoula, it is hard to see signs today of what Hurricane Katrina did. The downtown was rebuilt, and they're currently fixing up the train depot. But not all the people have returned. Today, Pascagoula's population is at about 22,000, about 15% lower than what it was before Katrina.
We'll be coming up to Bay St. Louis Drawbridge. Coming around the curve right now, if everybody would look out the windows here shortly. Coming over to beautiful Bay St. Louis.
Beautiful is the right word for Bay St. Louis. The ride leading up to the city has a long stretch over the water. And as you go across the water, you can see the marina filled with boats. And along Beach Boulevard, there are lots of colorful bars to choose from with a view of the Gulf. And just a couple blocks up from there, near the tracks, are plenty of places to pick up some local art, including at Gallery 220.
It's always been an arty town, which that's why I'm here.
Janice McCardle is the gallery's owner, and she likes to say in college she majored in mud. Really, ceramics. Basically the same thing. Visitors from New Orleans often come in here to pick up a ceramic tile based on all sorts of New Orleans buildings. churches, bars, and plenty of high schools.
In New Orleans, they love their high schools. It doesn't matter where you went to college. It's where, and everybody knows where you live, who you know, and it all depends on what school you go to.
So remember how I said which side of a hurricane you're on matters? Well, it also matters how close you are to landfall. And Bay St. Louis was about as close to that spot as you could get. Its neighboring town, Waveland, was the landfall point, and so much of Bay St. Louis was just washed away. Janice shows me a printed out picture on her wall. It's this aerial shot of part of the town. And with all the sand and collapsed buildings, it really does look like a war zone.
This is all bars, restaurants, art galleries along here, and then the water is in front, here. And so this...
And there's like nothing there right now.
There's nothing. It's like a tsunami just came in and just crushed our little town. It probably took us at least 10 years to get our infrastructure back together, because as you can see, we're dirt. We're just crumbled buildings, and everything had to be bulldozed away, and it took months and months, and then it turned into years. But what has happened to the town since we've have our marina is just tremendous. What's happened with the place.
Yeah, that's where Bay St. Louis is now booming.
Yes.
Bay St. Louis has rebuilt and has a reputation as a New Orleans ocean air getaway. And now, after 40 years, Janice is retiring and selling this gallery.
Do you think it's going to be a challenge to sell this space? Do you think it's going to be easy to find buyers?
We've only been on the market for 2 months and 3 weeks, and I've had 7 offers, and I'm in a contract right now.
Wow, okay, so we'll move fast.
Excited. Yeah, there's not very much property for sale around here, commercial property. So, and it's a wonderful building.
One thing that has not been wonderful has been insurance.
Absolutely terrible. It's almost like we have a division line, which is I-10, our interstate, that goes from Jacksonville to San Diego and comes, right above us. And anything below I-10, there's no insurance. They're very picky, and most people, I hate to say this, have to self-insure.
Meaning they have no insurance beyond their savings. Janice does that too.
You have to just, have money to self-insure, which is sad. We want all types of people here, but, it's kind of made society choose who can live here.
And is that an economic decision? People who can afford it can live here?
Yes. Which, it's wrong, because we should have everybody, and that's what makes a cool town. All kinds of people.
That was our economic mobility reporter, Stephen Basaha, riding the new Amtrak train connecting Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana along the Gulf Coast. Stephen, I understand you reported from some of the other spots, too. Where can we hear more of that?
Yeah, you could go check out WWNO's podcast, Sea Change. I talked with a barber who's been in business for 60 years in Biloxi, and another man in New Orleans who brought the first grocery store back to the lower Ninth Ward after Katrina. And again, the show is WWNO's Sea Change.
This week's show is cooked up by the Gulf States Newsroom team. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Again, I'm your host, Joseph King. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to steer your brew.